Hey guys, this is M4T and I'll be reviewing the Opteka 6.5mm f5 zoom lens on this episode of On the Sea. Now I love wide-angle lenses, but I can't stand distortion, so I went on the impossible task of trying to find a lens for under $200 that I could review for this show that could also provide a wide angle, but that proved to be impossible. I failed in my task, and so what I ended up with is the lens you're currently looking at me through. And this lens is a Opteka 6.5mm f3.5 lens. It's for the Canon EF systems, but I've adapted it to Mega Four Thirds. At this point, I'm currently just using a straight adapter. It doesn't have a focal reducer in it. Typically, it's like pretty wide. You can actually see your finger coming up, creeping up beside the lens if you put it through there. But on Mega Four Thirds, you kind of get just a smaller crop of that full image.
Enter the Opteka 6.5mm f3.5 fisheye lens. Basically a rebranded Samyang Rokinon 8mm f3.5. I bought this at Amazon for $130. In the box you'll get some paper materials, a leather pouch, and the lens itself with rear lens cover and front lens cap. The pouch is a nice touch and it comes with a lockable drawstring. The rear lens cover is standard, while the front lens cap feels cheap. In terms of build quality, the lens is okay, but the aperture ring is a bit loose to inspire confidence. The front lens element is coated in something which worries me because it's so exposed and likely to be a dust magnet. The act of putting on the adapter is tight, and every time I do it I wonder if I'm going to break something. This lens is a fully manual full-frame lens for Canon EOS EF systems, but adapted to Mega Four Thirds. I'm using an EOS to C-mount adapter combined with a C-mount to Mega Four Thirds adapter. The reason I have multiple adapters is to have the flexibility of trying my manual lenses on different devices. Though if you do this for unconventional cameras, I would advise getting adapters with adjustable length.
So I don't know why they call this a 6.5mm lens, considering it's an exact clone of a Samyang or a Rokinon 8mm lens. But I'm not complaining since it seems to be for a lot cheaper than any of those lenses. It could be that there's a quality difference in the actual construction, but so far I haven't really noticed anything.
If you want to retain the wider view and increase the stop of light, you can get a focal reducer instead of the plain adapter, but the really good ones are really expensive. A cheaper $100 one will probably be okay, but with a slight softening and loss of sharpening. Depending on your needs, this might be what you want, but two $15 adapters are what I'm using here. So how does it perform? Wide open at f3.5 you get a lot of performance, but you lose a lot in the sharpness department. From f5.6 to f11 it's so consistent that I can't really tell even where the sweet spot is, but it's reasonable to assume it's in the middle at f8. It's sharp to a point where my sensor is failing me. Stop down to f16 and f22, it's not bad. When images are this wide it can be hard to tell. Focusing is a bit weird. It's so wide that if you can zoom into focus like I can on the G7, you might not be able to judge focus on anything other than very close objects. You might be happy to just leave it on minimal focus and take far objects as they are, because at a 0 point everything seems to be in passable focus from 1 to 100 feet away. Unfortunately, the knob makes minuscule changes at amounts inconsistent with the lens marking, but this is forgivable because adapted lenses are at distances from the center that may not represent the best working condition of the lens. I would normally have to use a composite to get this kind of a shot, and it can still take a panorama with a wide lens as well. The only unfortunate part is the low light performance.
What you're looking at right now is me on a green screen in my living room. And so you can see that this camera is so wide that I just can't avoid getting some of the room in there. But on the good news is that, I only need to cover myself in green screen and then I can get a wider shot of myself. This camera is about 1.5 feet away right now. 1 feet away is about here, and if I were to go any closer, I would technically lose focus because this thing has a minimum focus range of about a feet.
A fisheye lens like this can be very difficult to work with, as you can see from the far out warping going on just by me tilting the camera up and down. You can get really weird spacey effects from this, but luckily we can easily defish everything using a basic plugin, a free plugin called Alex 4D. All you have to do is just apply the setting and it's basically all done. Easy like that, just like a magic button. The only thing you lose is a little bit of sharpness.
When you're going to defish a lens like this, you kind of have to take in consideration that you're going to lose some of the outside and you're going to lose some of the sharpness. And so when you're taking a shot with this, you have to take care to really learn this lens and see what you can do with it. But I think that for most people, you're going to really appreciate just how much more you can get into the shot. This isn't a full fisheye lens. This is actually more like a barrel warp lens. A fisheye lens would give you perfectly kind of like circle image. But in this one, it reaches the outside of the frame, so you don't have to worry about it.
Defishing isn't something I like to do because there's always a part of me that says it's inaccurate, but if you're stitching photos together anyways, it could potentially be more accurate than that. When you need wide, you need wide. In astrophotography, it's so wide, it will also be affected by peripheral lights. It's best to take sky shots away from the city lights if you can help it. That said, I've never got a larger star field. You can get photos just like this.
So you're gonna have a hell of a time getting this thing balanced on something like the Zhiyun crane or any other stabilizing device. But with a wide angle, you don't really have to worry about it that much. A wide angle is actually easier to stabilize than a telephoto kind of narrow shot.
I was limited in my movement on the gimbal because the camera has to be pulled so far back in balancing that the viewfinder can't let the camera go any farther. I had to change the mode to compensate. On its own, it's so wide that maybe stabilization is actually not that big of a deal in some situations. Then again, fisheye footage is not often appreciated in filmmaking.
Make no mistake about it, this lens is heavy. If you're putting it on your camera, don't expect to be able to like go the distance with it. It's not as heavy as some other lenses, but it's still pretty heavy for a micro four thirds camera.
Back outside, I've gotten crazy ghosting with this lens. I don't know if it's just mine, but sometimes it was not welcome. Other people may disagree. This lens has some chromatic aberration beyond the center, about 1 millimeter at 100% near the edge, and I don't know if adapting the lens causes this. So the value proposition of a lens like this is that, first of all, you can get in really tight spaces and you can still capture a lot in the frame, and I thought that was the most valuable part of having this lens. And you know, there was times when I was just within about 2 feet and I was able to capture a gigantic rock in front of me. I was able to capture a garden which was just in a crawl space, and I was able to get really close up to just little objects in the town, and I could still capture a lot in the frame. And so that's the most important part of having this wide lens. The second part is that there is a sense of proportion that comes with having a wide lens that you wouldn't get even just from going far away with another lens. And so having a wide lens like this, it really changes something in the proportion of the objects.
So in conclusion, this fisheye lens may not be exactly what I wanted, but when adapted to micro four thirds, it gives me an ultra wide angle lens that I can defish and get a wide angle shot with. Now, other people might say that you lose a lot of sharpness in the process of defishing, and that's true. Now the good thing about this lens is that you can set it to like the lowest focal length, the lowest focal distance, and you can just go and everything is sharp. But then obviously with defishing, you're gonna get some blurriness, but you know, it's a small price to pay to get a wide angle shot. Now if you're serious about a wide angle but rectilinear lens, then you're gonna have to dish out like $500 for a Laowa 7.5mm. But that would never be reviewed on a show like this where everything has to be less than $200. But for this price range, you're not gonna be able to get something better. This is a clone of something that's usually a little bit more expensive, but it works out well. So thank you for watching Micro 4T. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up and let me know what you like about it. And if you don't like it, give it a thumbs down and let me know what you don't like about it. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing so I can see you again next time.